Hey, welcome back to the Pretty Well podcast. I'm Lisa Smith, and I could not be more excited. Today, I'm bringing back one of our favorite guests, Amy Kurtz. Facing debilitating pain and health issues since her teenage years, Amy, who's a patient advocate and author, she knows the frustration, fear, and isolation that come with chronic illness. She wrote the best-selling book, Kicking Sick, your go-to guide for thriving with chronic health conditions. Amy's work has been heralded by Mark Hyman, Chris Carr, and many others. Lena Dunham named Kicking Sick as one of her top 10 desert island books of all time. Amy has contributed to Oprah Daily and has had multiple appearances on Good Morning America as well as Fox. She's here today to talk about her second book called But You Look Fine: Trapped in the Hell Between Sick and Well and How to Break Free. It comes out on June 9th. Welcome, Amy.
Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be back.
Oh, I'm so happy to have you back and to talk about your new book. Here's the book, but it is amazing. We shared before I got on that I have had the pleasure of reading it, and we definitely want to talk about some of the main highlights of your book. But let's just take a step back and reframe our sequel here. You wrote Kicking Sick as a guide for navigating chronic illness and actually learning how to live again. And during our last interview, you mentioned you were writing this book. So when you finished Kicking Sick, Amy, what did you feel that you had reached the other side, or did you realize that there were still some things that were unresolved that needed a closer look?
The truth is that when I was writing Kicking Sick and it came out into the world, I really believed that I had my health under control and that I knew what my diagnoses were. And the truth is, when I was putting out the press for that book, I would go home and feel so exhausted and just feel like I don't know how I'm going to muster the energy to be able to deliver this the way that I want to deliver it to the world. And that was really my first sign that I hadn't had everything under control and that I was just really treading water.
Mm.
And after the press ended for Kicking Sick, I really thought to myself, wow, I really think I don't have it fully under control still. And everything that I wrote in that book, I totally stand by, and it helped me live and thrive with certain conditions. But I decided after Kicking Sick to go to my 36th doctor and muster up the strength, courage, energy, finances to try again and to hope that this time somebody could give me a clear answer because up until then it had all felt very confusing and chaotic and unclear. So I went to my 36th doctor and did all the tests again. I brought my Harry Potter anthology of medical records and just hoped on a prayer that he would be able to help me because I had heard really wonderful things about him. And he did all of his tests and said, I'm very clear about what's going on here. And he said, you have late stage neurological Lyme disease and co-infections and mast cell activation syndrome. And it was like everything inside of my body knew it was true. Everything. It riveted through me.
Mm.
And that brought up a lot. I mean, not only did it bring up the grief of all of the years and doctors and throwing spaghetti at the wall to see what would stick and taking so many things I didn't even know what was doing what. There was also a real deep grief that so many years had gone by in my young adulthood without really having a clear answer. And also real sense of pride that I believed myself and that I hadn't given up on myself and that I had pushed that hard and had that much resilience to get to that doctor to know that I finally had a way out.
Mm.
And I knew that the road ahead of me was hard, but I also knew that there was light at the end of the tunnel.
I can imagine that that grief was so heavy, all the work you had done, and that you had this like, why is it not better now? But now, when you finally get the answers, I can imagine that it must have been very mixed feelings, that grief, that pride, that now what? How long is this journey? What was that like for you?
Yeah, it was a lot. At first, I felt just like I knew it was true, and
Mm.
I felt real pride that I was proud of my young self for not giving up and to keep going. But with treating the right condition and getting better, it really opened the door for a whole other phase of healing that I wasn't expecting. And there was this really tremendous sadness at how many years I had tried so hard to help myself without clear answers. And unfortunately, that is not discriminating amongst Lyme patients. It's very complicated, and there aren't a lot of Lyme literate physicians. And it was intense. I mean, it was really sad. And I went through a lot of really deep grief. And I do believe that that's essential to truly healing, is being able to meet yourself in a moment that feels so deep like that.
I agree completely in all healing, regardless of what we're healing from, that until we address the grief and get to the point of pride that you said, it's a healthy pride of, I did it, I persevered, I cannot believe I've gotten to this stage. Finally, this was something I've dreamed about for years. And you're going to unpack this for us, but it stays in the body. We know that from some amazing researchers in this field. So many people now are telling us that grief stays in the body. So, what did you find? And this is what your book really is about. You mentioned that you needed to unpack something else. So now you're on the healing journey. You find a doctor who finally knows what's going on. And you're like, okay, good, light at the end of the tunnel. And you start making progress physically. But what did you find underneath the hood that was so surprising?
Well, it was shocking, but the doctor had said to me, the treatment's going to be really hard, but you will feel like you have a new body when you're done. And I believed in him. I believed in the process, and I went for it. And it was a really, really hard mountain to climb. And then I did. And then I thought, wow, I do feel so much better. Things are so much easier. I think I might feel better than I felt in my entire life, literally. And then I got stuck in a way that I couldn't explain because there wasn't anything out there that could tell me what I was feeling, but I was physically better, and it made room for the mental and emotional processing of what had happened to me. And so while I was physically better and everyone was like, okay, time to move on, you're well,
Mhm.
I started to develop extreme anxiety, extreme hypervigilance, extreme obsession that if I didn't make sure everything was done in the right way, that everything would come back flooding back the way that it was before, or even worse. And I didn't really understand what I was feeling. And it wasn't until I had a conversation with my husband, who has seen me through so much of it, where he said, I have to say something to you. And I know it's going to sound a little provocative. And I'm like, oh boy, all right, here we go. And I'm like, what is it? And this is also something that I really cherish about him, is that he will always tell me the truth. And he said, I think there's another phase that you're experiencing here. Like, I always expected that there would be another phase. You've been in survival for so long.
Hmm.
I was like, whoa, trying to process what he said. And it took me weeks to just sit with this. Like, am I having this after effect to illness? Is there another phase to healing? Because in our society in the West, we're told that your physical body doesn't really affect your mental, emotional, spiritual, psychological self. I mean, it's literally like you're physically better, move on with your life. And yet
Hmm.
I was looking down a barrel of over 15 years of being in survival mode and running on a hamster wheel. I wasn't living, I was running. I was terrified. Went from 25 to 40, and it felt like I blinked.
Wow.
And I had this experience where I couldn't get off the hamster wheel. My nervous system could not unwind because my body was better, but my mind had not gotten the memo. And it made me dive into trauma research and to understanding what this after effect could be, because I couldn't find anything else that was out there. And I wrote, But You Look Fine, because It was the book that I needed when I was really struggling in a way that I couldn't even put language to. So in the book, I call this medical trauma brain, where you're physically better and your mind has not gotten the memo, but it's literally the imprint that is left on your mind after the physical illness or the storm is over. And that is really how it works. There's so many patients that I've worked with before in my own practice. I've interviewed over hundreds of patients and trauma experts, but you literally are in survival mode, which means that all of the gaslighting, the invalidation, the terrible things that happen to a patient in their experience of just trying to get better, especially as women, we just shelve it because there's no space for it. The only space is to survive and to
Mm.
get through it. And I realized in this aftermath that I wasn't living, I was running. And MTB is really the imprint left on your brain after your body has navigated through a serious illness. It's like the imprint that never lets you feel like you're over the illness, that you're not safe in your own body.
Mm. Yeah.
I'm here to tell people that that imprint doesn't have to be indelible and that there are so many ways that you can help yourself, but a recovery program post illness is essential to freedom.
As you're talking, anyone can relate to what you're saying, even if they haven't been necessarily through the same hell chronic illness you've been through. But I'm just in my brain making parallels to people who've grown up in abusive homes, people who've been in toxic relationships, people who have been traumatized at work. Like there's so many things where the brain gets this imprint and we do all the work and think, I think I'm fine. And then something triggers us and we're like, oh crap, I'm not fine. I thought I was fine. I thought I dealt with it. So talk to us about that imprint on your brain and in your body, because your body, your fascia is holding that as well. Your whole nervous system is holding it. Talk to us about once you realize that, where'd you go with it then?
I view this as different than it is a version of post-traumatic stress, of course, but post-traumatic stress disorder is from one specific event or
Mhm.
life-altering traumatic event that changes the way that you are in your body, where you have flashbacks, and it's a singular event. Complex post-traumatic stress, which is being understood more recently, is when the event happens over and over and over again. And what I am calling medical trauma brain, or MTB, is underneath this umbrella where the threat is your body.
Mm-hmm.
You can't feel safe in your body because your body has been the threat over and over and over again. So for me, what I started to really research and understand was trauma. And I can't think of any person who's been through any life-altering illness, specifically like me with invisible illnesses, autoimmune illnesses, misdiagnosis, cancer patients, someone who's had an onset, acute, horrific thing happen, like a stroke or an accident, and then they're in chronic pain. I can't think of anyone who's been through a life-altering illness who would not be affected in this way. It is traumatic. And the
Mm-hmm.
expectation from society that we're sick or we're well, or we just get back up on the horse, it leaves people stuck in this very isolating, lonely space. I really feel there's a loneliness epidemic in our country, and I can't think of a singular thing that is more lonely than living with invisible illness or living in the aftermath of an illness where you're like expected to just get back to it, but nothing's where you left it, and not a single part of you is the same as it was before. I always saw my health challenge as the okay, I'm just gonna put my life as an actress on pause, figure this out, and go right back to where it was before. But when I was finally better, the cruise ship had already left. Everything had changed. I had changed so profoundly from this experience in good and in bad ways. And I needed a way to recover that wasn't accessible. And through my work interviewing Dr. Gabor Mate and Peter Levine and other trauma legends, I started to understand that there's a stress that comes with illness that's like a wildfire. That's how I experienced it. It felt like it was just so out of control and so terrifying, and I had to stay hyper alert or it would get me again.
Mm.
And I realized that if we don't address this aftermath, it's like a ghost is haunting you. It's what I call the Shadowlands. Basically, after I was physically better, I'd go out with my friends, I'd be at dinner, I'd be laughing, we'd be having fun, and all of those things were true. However, my mind was locked in a sandstorm desert with no way out, all alone. It felt like my brain was imprisoned and it was still stuck in the storm, even though my body was better. So I believe that this is a place that so many patients feel where they're identifying as still sick after it's over when they're not anymore. And this could be anyone from a migraine patient who I interviewed somebody who shared with me that she had hemiplegic migraines for years and they would happen all the time and it would be so debilitating. And then she realized when I told her this thought that I had that she doesn't actually have migraines anymore. But at the second she gets an aura or starts to have anything that could trigger a headache, she's on the couch popping two Advil with a cover over her eyes. Or I had another friend who shared with me that she kind of goes into this depressive state at the onset of any kind of flare up. So I realized that this is like a really universal thing from talking to so many people. And I feel that Western medicine is prone to hyper focused on the problem and it's life-saving and it is miraculous. And my father's a doctor. I have great respect for physicians, but I'm advocating that we take a more peripheral vision approach where we treat a patient who is in the gray zone, as I call it, with all parts of themselves. I believe it is completely crucial to healing and total well-being to be tending to these other parts of yourself while you're going through something physical.
Mm.
If I had had those tools, if I had known, and this is some, I'd been in therapy for years, but I was never anticipating the aftermath and the pain that I would be in psychically after the physical storm was over.
I totally get it because the finish line of your race was always to get better. And you're thinking in your mind, I should be good. I crossed the finish line. For the most part, I might have little nagging things here and there, but in no
Yeah,
way am I physically debilitated. Or even worse, I'll tell you, this is guilt-inducing. You should be grateful. Have you ever heard that? Like, you should be
of
grateful. You're
course.
like, well, I am, but I'm also stuck with this in this wildfire. What did that look like for you? What were those symptoms of medical trauma brain for you personally?
I was just living in a state of fear, like perpetual fear. I was afraid that if I wasn't hyper vigilant around taking care of myself, especially at the onset of anything that could signal a flare up, that everything would come back just as it was before, like a wave. And so I was so rigid and so tense and so anxious and so almost obsessive compulsive about preventing something from coming back. I was so rigid and I couldn't calm down. I literally was like, why can't I calm down? I'm supposed to be better. And it had just given space for this horrible aftermath that I wasn't expecting. Like, I thought, okay, freedom, let's get back to it and figure out what my life is. But like I said, beyond the sadness, it was real anxiety, like debilitating anxiety. But I didn't even know I was having it because nobody had really talked about what this phase of illness was. For other people that I interviewed, the Shadowlands, as I call it, could be depression and feeling disassociated from yourself. But for me, it was really intense anxiety, hypervigilance, and fear.
You felt like you had to control all the variables. You had to control the supplements, the food, what you're exposed to. Am I following you? That was the
Yeah, and I had had toxic mold exposure in my apartment, so I became very sensitive to chemicals. And it was like at any sense that there could be mold somewhere, I would just go into damage control and try to make myself as safe as possible instead of understanding that if something is to happen, I can handle it.
Mm,
I knew that in my head, but my nervous system had never stood down. My nervous system was still acting as if I was sick.
yep.
And because there was no language around this and no term for it, I was struggling in the dark.
I relate to that completely. We can know cognitively the facts and fully 100% accept the facts. But if our nervous system, as you said, doesn't stand down, its whole purpose is for us to survive. So if it doesn't get the message, and there's a different way to get the message because the nervous system doesn't speak in language. So how did you learn to teach your nervous system? And now through your book, you're teaching others. Okay, we need to deal with this differently. What did you do?
Regulating your nervous system is how you heal trauma. And in my book, in the second part, I outline the right mixture of therapies that worked for me. I'm not a doctor, but I am a patient and I'm an advocate and I'm a health coach. I've worked with thousands of women. And this book for me is really a roadmap of escaping this gray zone of psychic suffering. And what I tried to do for myself is figure out what kind of therapy could help me. I tried cognitive behavioral therapy, which helped me greatly. Then I realized that that wasn't enough to kind of break through for me. So I added on EMDR, which is a trauma therapy, which helped me tremendously. And then I discovered somatic healing.
Mhm.
And that's really the body brain therapy, and that really helped me tremendously. I put a lot of time and effort into regulating my nervous system. And this condition is complicated. It requires a really complex approach. And what I've done in this book is presented a simplified approach where I've identified the key components for various modalities that together were highly effective and changed my life. But what I really try to do is I experienced being a perpetual patient as very disempowering.
Mhm.
I wanted in the beginning to hand it over to anybody who could help get me better faster. It was too much to bear alone. We're taught doctor knows best, but the real healing is when you are an empowered patient and you empower yourself to take care of yourself because the truth is nobody really knows you better than you. Nobody cares about you getting better more than you.
Mhm.
And what I'm urging people to do is to take this mental, psychological, neurological, emotional component as seriously as the physical illness so that you don't end up where I did, where I was suffering like I just felt like I was trapped in the dark.
Mhm. Mhm. You make a great point in your book, how to choose the right healthcare team. What I took away from that is you need to choose them as if you're interviewing them to see if they're the right partner on your team. Talk about that.
A lot of times with the many people that I've worked with and with myself, I was my first teacher, but it was that if somebody told me that someone was the best at something, then that's who I wanted to see because they were the best. But just because someone is the best at something doesn't mean that they're the best for you. A lot of the mistakes that I made early was accepting bad care and accepting invalidation and gaslighting and somebody who wouldn't help me be in a position where I could thrive. And what I realized in that, and what I've helped so many of my clients with, is you have to really get to know yourself intimately in this moment of crisis and realize who do I need? What would make me feel safe in a relationship with a doctor. Think about it. Like you wouldn't marry the first person you went on a date with. You have to be really clear about what your individual needs are because this is not one size fits all and we're all uniquely different. And what my list is might be different than yours, but you need to really know what type of person you want to partner with because ultimately if you're not 50% of the healing equation, you're not going to get better, not in this landscape, not when 194 million Americans have a chronic disease. It is up to us to be our own advocate, and that starts with choosing the right healthcare providers for you, not necessarily who's right for your friend or Susie next door or anybody else.
So many have gotten caught up into the doctor's the authority. And you really mention the response of the sympathetic nervous system going into overdrive in a doctor's appointment, where if you say something that gives a little bit of pushback to a doctor and then they come back harder at you, then you would tend to go into a fawning position of like, I need this doctor, I need this person on my team. So now I'm going to back off and let them do what we do in fawning, like, oh, okay, whatever. I saw myself in that. And anytime I've done it, I've left those offices so frustrated. So let's talk about what that fawning response is in a medical practitioner's appointment.
Well, there's three different, I call them all the effing Fs, but it's fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. And some people's response may be to be like, don't talk to me like that. You're insane. I'm leaving. Some people might be go into a flight response where they just kind of flee themselves. But for me, I've always been a fawner. And what that means is I've always been like, I need this. I need this person in authority to help me. So
Mhm.
even if I'm getting bad behavior,
Yeah.
even if they invalidate my experience, I need them to get better. And so for me, that would mean I would back off or I wouldn't ask certain questions, or I wouldn't be as much of an advocate as I would today.
Uh,
And that is really detrimental, not only to yourself, because you are not only enabling bad behavior, but you're also telling yourself that I don't know my body. I don't trust myself enough to take myself out of this situation and try with someone else.
mhm.
You're giving it to the person. You're giving all your power and
And
all your trust into everyone but you.
it feels terrible.
Yeah.
I totally know it. I've had that same thought. I need your expertise, so I will back off now. It's never ended well. It's never like that person even ended up being a good fit and helped me get to a next step on a healing journey. I can totally relate to that. Yeah, that's
There's a lot of undoing that has to come with that after, too. So much of healing is having agency over your health and your life and your relationships and learning about yourself and who you are now after this experience has happened. But ultimately, there are so many doctors and there are really wonderful doctors out there. And if somebody isn't validating you or somebody is making you feel like it's all in your head, move on. Burn fire. There is no obligation for you to stay. The only thing that you're doing is wasting your own time by staying with someone who's not invested in helping you get better.
right. And your nervous system stays in that survival mode because now you've been gaslit and it's a scramble then. It's very complicated, but the simplest bottom line to that is find somebody who aligns with you, who you trust and feel safe with, and that
Yeah.
you feel like they can help you on this
And
journey.
we're not alone in this experience. There's a Harvard study that showed that 70% of females have felt gaslit in a medical office by a doctor. This is something that it's not black and white. There are people suffering in the gray. And if you are giving your power away to somebody who's not treating you well and who doesn't believe you,
Yeah.
what message are you sending to yourself that you can't trust yourself? I really feel Like, I hope that people hear this and don't do that. There are so many doctors out there. There are so many people who can meet your needs, who will be forward thinking, who will be open to alternative approaches. And the truth is that 80% of what we do for our health is outside of the doctor's office.
Hmm.
But you need a champion. You need somebody who trusts you to know your body, who has treated people like you before. That was a big thing for me. I wanted to know that the person that I was seeing had experience with the condition that I had. And I wasn't just sort of a guinea pig because I had felt that way for so long with so many complex chronic illnesses. Ultimately, it's up to you to demand the kind of care that you deserve. And you should feel free to move on if somebody is not respecting you and believing that you know your body best.
Mm. It's so empowering to move on. It's so empowering to fire somebody who has not treated you well and say, I know there are other people out there who will
Oh,
be
yeah.
so helpful for
And
me.
even I see a lot of clients who struggle with having been with someone for a really long time and having had really good results, and then it's not really working anymore, and they feel bad to move on. So
Interesting.
people will stay even when they know I think I can do better. I've sort of dismissed this behavior that I didn't really love, but they have helped me, so I should probably stay. It's like the power dynamic that we've been taught from when we were young is like respect your elder, respect your doctor. But it's okay. It's okay to have had great results with someone and move on because it's your life. You have one life, one precious life. And if you're just staying or you're in a bad dynamic where you don't feel believed and you feel like you have to put a mask on for your medical provider, or this applies to really any relationship,
Yeah.
you need to be the one that's going to take care of yourself and get yourself in a better situation. Only you will do that. You're entirely up to you. And I didn't know that.
Lots of us don't. So for the listener today who is saying, I needed to hear this. A lot of times, as women, we've been socially conditioned to not rock the boat, to be people pleasers, to put community and relationships above even efficacy in a medical
To be a good girl.
to be a good girl. Exactly. Like you said, there, especially today, there are so many physicians and so many healthcare providers who now are looking at the body from a holistic standpoint and not just compartmentalizing each piece. So if you're not with the right one, find the right one. You can, and it'll change your life.
I also find that the Western medical system is not set up to handle the chronic disease epidemic in this country. Oftentimes, they will look at the body as one singular part that doesn't affect the other. And I've found that you really, if you have multiple complex chronic or invisible conditions, you need to find somebody who's a functional medicine doctor to add to your team who looks at lifestyle and diet and really connects all the parts of your body to figure out what the underlying issue is. And I think that the system isn't set up to support the growth. When I wrote Kicking Sick, 150 million Americans had a chronic disease. And 7 years later, for But You Look Fine, it's now 194 million Americans. That is 7 in 10.
Wow.
That's a 25% increase, which
Is
means
that?
that if you or I don't have something, the person next to you definitely does. I
Mm,
thought 1 in 2 was big enough, but now the numbers are just so alarming.
mm,
And a lot of illness these days is caused by environmental factors, by the food we're eating. There's so much that a patient can do to help themselves get better. It's not about just taking a pill. It's
mm.
about examining how am I going to live? How am I going to actually take this experience and make myself better for it? I mean, I didn't grow up in a family that understood anything about nutrition, but I know later in my life when I was desperate and I said, you know what, I'm going to try an anti-inflammatory diet, that 8 out of 10 of my pain went away
Mm,
just from diet. But
mhm.
that was something I could control. And that's the great thing about all of these factors is the air you breathe, the way you de-stress, what you eat, how you sleep. Those are up to you. The conditions that you set for yourself, the relationships you have, who you let close to you, how you're going to create space for yourself to recover from illness in this post-illness period. That's all up to you, and nobody else will do that for you. And that's empowering. And that's ultimately what needs to happen is that patients need to be empowered to make the right choices for themselves in a system that can feel very disempowering.
So you mentioned in your book, as you're starting to recognize this space where you need to start looking at it differently and you want to recognize you have this grief you're dealing with, medical trauma. You mentioned that it all starts with peeing. Let's talk about that.
I love that that's the quote.
Peeing, aim.
Well, if
Let's
you
go. It's a great point, but I want our listeners to hear because it's awesome.
did you laugh when you read
I laughed hard when I read it, and I was like, "Amen, sister." This is
it?
the stuff we actually do if we think about it. We're, oh, I can hold that. I can hold it. And you're like, why? Why are you not listening to your body?
One of the things that I talk about is that for so long we put our intuition on mute, whether that be for a doctor's office or a relationship or just being in survival, and we don't listen to our bodies that are complex organisms. And the fact that they were giving you signs that you weren't well in the first place is pretty miraculous. I use this analogy in the book where it's kind of like if your friend that you're close with, you just start ghosting because you don't feel well and they haven't heard from you in a year. And then you're like, hey, I'm back. Let's hang out. And they're like, I haven't heard from you in a year. That's sort of what starts to happen when you start to understand and listen to your body after so many years of putting your intuition on mute. And I say that it all starts with peeing is because think about it. If you have to pee and you're holding it in all day, what message are you sending to your body? You're saying, this is not as important as X, Y, and Z that I'm doing, or this meeting I have to have, or whatever. But if you feel the urge to pee and then you go to pee, you're sending a really important signal to your nervous system like, hey, I'm now listening. I'm now paying attention. I'm feeling hunger. I'm going to go eat something.
Right.
Or I'm feeling anxious. I'm going to do a quick meditation to try to calm myself down. It's like you're caring for yourself as if you would a child.
Yes.
And we're just, as women specifically, programmed to put ourselves last. And that is an achievement to be selfless. But if you're going to really heal in a somatic way, and reconnect all parts of yourself. It starts with listening to your most basic needs and signals. And that sends a message to your brain. Hey, we're listening. What
Mhm.
else do you want to show us? It creates an intimacy
Mhm.
within your brain and your body that connects them again.
It really builds self-trust, each of those. And a big one that you highlight is rest. We tend to think of rest as weakness and laziness, as opposed to it's sharpening the saw. That's all it is. So if your body says, I'm tired, I need to rest, then to begin to pay attention to that builds that confidence and that self-trust that, oh, I can depend on myself. And that is a huge step in healing. One more thing when it comes to rest, Amy, I'd like you to talk about the difference because we tend to confuse rest with sleep. Let's talk about that.
We live in a culture that glorifies not resting,
Yeah.
that we're saying go, 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 accomplish, accomplish, accomplish. And nobody actually thinks about rest as like restoration for yourself. And I think that that is like completely essential to full healing. I'm sure you agree in this, but when you're sleeping, which is so important for rest and restoration, it's also really important that you take moments and you unplug during the day. I get it. Kids are gonna kids, bills are gonna bill. You got to do what life demands of you. But that doesn't mean you can't lie on your back. And even if your kids are with you, look up at the clouds, just rest. Like I call it a lay flat because I think that everybody should have a lay flat when they have a minute.
I do too.
I have a biomat and I just lay on it for even 15 minutes and just shut my eyes. But that recharges me. That will totally reset me for the day. And it can be something as simple as sitting down and doing a 5 minute guided meditation on any of the apps that are available to us now. It could be as simple as laying down and just closing your eyes for 15 minutes or doing a body scan exercise. Or if you have kids, figure out a way to include them. Not every kid's going to sit and meditate with you, but you could lay down together and look up at the clouds and talk about what you see.
Mm,
I used to do that with my mom, and I didn't even think about that until right this second, but I loved that. And that's an experience I carry with me. It's also essential because if you have children, you're showing them throughout your day that it's really important to tend to yourself first. And that is not something that we've learned, at least not my generation.
mm.
Self-care is ultimately the key to everything. And if you've had a nervous system that has been running for so long, you have to take these moments of rest and restoration and schedule them in throughout your day. Jay Shetty says it's as important to schedule in downtime as it is to schedule go time. And I love that because when you're healing from such an intense life altering experience, it's essential that you are scheduling things throughout your day that just help remind you to settle down
Yeah.
because we can so easily go into full adrenaline. We've been programmed that way for so long if you're dealing with a health crisis.
And survival mode, it's survival mode on top of survival mode. If you're already in a chronic health situation, you're in survival mode. And now if you're pushing, go, 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 you're compounding that survival mode on top of survival mode. And your body eventually just says, what are you doing? And it totally gives up. I love the lay flat. My back acts up occasionally and probably more than occasionally. And I do that every day. I lay flat and I set my timer for 10 minutes. And the other thing that does is you're taking off the pressure of gravity, which sounds like, oh, that's not a big deal. Actually, it really is a big deal. Your body all day fights gravity and you take that out. And so you're giving your body rest plus other benefits as you're just laying there, whether you're looking at the clouds or just laying there meditating. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's really important. I love a lay flat. I mean, if you're standing up and you have a minute for a lay flat, you should take it. Take it
Hey,
from us.
amen. I know because even when you said to do a body scan, if you can lay flat, I lay flat this morning. I went and got my cup of tea that I drink every morning. And I was like, oh, my back's bugging me, my ribs out. So I laid on the kitchen floor and I have two yellow labs. And of course, one's 2 years old. So she's all puppy. I was covered in dog hair before we got on her. She's like on my face and on my body. I'm like, this is not Phoebe. This is not exactly what I was going for. But I
Phoebe.
got lots of endorphins. So let's go to meditation. You have a great story about your first time meditating, and you thought this is going to be great. Talk to us about.
I forgot about that. I was like, I need to be a meditator because all of these people that I was seeing that were meditating were so blissed out in a way I was so not. So I'm like, I'm going to be a meditator. So I went to a class, and the second that I went to shut my eyes and be inside myself, it was like I almost couldn't keep my eyes closed. I joke that I had one eye open, but the truth is I wanted to army crawl out of the room under the door and be done. I just could not sit with myself. It was too painful. And I didn't understand that at the time, but it felt really hard to just sit with everything. This really ties in with the grief aspect that we talked about before, is that processing the grief of who you once were, the dreams of who you thought you would become is so important. And I realized looking back, even though it really is a funny story, that it was hard for me to sit with the loss
Mm,
of the life that I thought. was going to be mine.
Mhm. I can't tell you how many clients have said to me, I have tried meditating, I can't meditate. We all feel like that when we start because our mind is going 300 miles per hour, just as yours was on the grief of this is who I thought I would be, and it's not going to be who I am. Now,
Yeah.
you have arguably a larger platform now than you may have even had with your dreams. Who knows, right? You now have a platform of healing people and helping them through this journey, which is a huge impact in, meaning and purpose. And
It's interesting how that happens. Like, I was even talking to my literary agent, and I said, when I was fleshing out the idea for this book, and I said, I just always saw my life as before and after. And once I was actually better, I realized I couldn't just jump back into that life because everything had changed and I had changed so profoundly. And I saw them as two separate lives, like that were not connected. And the truth is that it's still my life. It just took me in a different path than I expected. And that's neither good nor bad.
mm,
It's still mine.
mm,
And it's up to me what I choose to do with it next. But it was interesting because I had realized, and I think a lot of people experience this when you have the spaciousness to look back at the experiences. Like I was before illness and after illness, and there was this crack down the middle of me.
mm,
And it's not that way.
mhm,
I was an actor, and then I took my creative energy and I put it into writing. And if I didn't do that, I wouldn't have the connection that I do with the people who read my books.
mm.
And I just pivoted, and life is about pivoting.
It is about pivoting. That's right. We never end up where we think we're going to end up. So
No,
I
never.
I don't know anyone who ever has. Can we then find the beauty and the joy and the meaning in the hardship is we get forged in the hardship. In the crucible of the hard, we get forged. So then can we find the beauty from the ashes as we go forward?
I love what you just said.
I do believe that's a part of this journey is reconciling that and then just catapulting off of it and saying, okay, then what is this purpose? Like I thought it was this, it's not this, it's something over here. What is that?
And at the same time, looking back at everything that I've been through and what my purpose, I mean, my pain became my purpose. But I think that, there is so much beauty and depth to me in my life that I never would have even tapped the surface of had I not gone through such tremendous hardship. I wouldn't have the depth within myself. I wouldn't see the beauty in everyday little things that I'm able to do that I never thought I would be able to do. I see the world and human beings so differently than I did before this happened to me. And while I wouldn't wish this on anyone, it's truly one of the best things that has ever happened to me because I've become a version of myself that I would have never met had I not gone through such tremendous adversity. This experience really showed me what I'm made of, and that's really important. That's the blessing in going through tremendous adversity is you see a side of yourself and you meet a version of yourself if you let it that will be so different than who you were before.
I have chills, really.
Oh.
It's so beautiful that now you see this version of yourself, but you realize how strong and courageous she is. And you can look back and say, oh my gosh, I am a badass. Look at how much grit I have. Look at how I show up. And now you take those strengths you didn't even know you were building in the crucible. And now you have these amazing strengths that you're applying toward this next season and all the seasons forward.
I love that you say the crucible because I call it the crucible effect, where
Oh, that's
getting
amazing.
sick or having a life-altering change changes the axis on which everything in your life functions. And a lot of times I feel, especially with younger people, if they get really sick, a lot of people can't see it. They don't understand, or but you look fine. They
Yeah.
don't understand. And everything changes. It's like everything shifts completely, every relationship, everything about your life. And then you realize who's still around and who's not.
For sure. Oh my gosh. I call hardship the crucible too. We're
Yeah.
burning off the waste products. We're getting purer like gold. And that comes from scripture. I didn't make that up.
I
That
didn't know that.
I have walked in the crucible and I know it. And it is so hard and it does change you. But you're right. It becomes this purifying lens through which your relationships, you even see, okay, who are my foxhole people? Who are the people that when I'm in the trenches, these are the people I know have my back and I have theirs.
Yeah.
That in and of itself is amazing.
Hmm.
But let's talk about, okay, wait, I have a quick question. So my quick question is, if you knew then in that journey of hardship and hell, what you know now about medical trauma brain, what would you have done different? What could you have done to address the body piece, not just the cognitive piece, that would have helped you realize sooner?
If I had been told this is going to be a traumatic experience, and what you've already experienced is traumatic. I mean, I went from being a normal 25-year-old to so sick I could barely walk or function at all back in my parents' home when all of my friends' lives were launching. And that's the time when you're figuring out who you are as an independent person in the world. If someone had said to me, this will be trauma if you don't acknowledge it and start to work with it now as opposed to later, I would have started doing EMDR therapy. I would have started to do somatic experiencing and started to look for these tools rather than just talk therapy, which is great, but trauma is its own thing. And there's compassionate inquiry, there's IFS, there's EMDR, and then there's also a lot of guided videos that you can watch at home if price and money is not available to you. There are so many things that are free now on YouTube where you can just start to integrate these practices and this rewiring because your brain gets rewired when you're constantly in fight or flight. But if I was able to understand that what was happening to me, if somebody had told me this is going to be traumatic, I would have treated it as such. I would have said, okay, there is going to be a mental, emotional, psychological aftermath of this. And I want to get ahead of that now and start to understand that angle of it rather than just seeing someone or talking to somebody to manage the day to day. I wish that I had known that I could get locked in survival mode. I didn't know. And I think that's the truth for many people. There are millions of us who are suffering in silence from an invisible wound. Doctors don't talk about it. Patients don't admit it. Sufferers don't talk about it. And it's just this silent, painful phase. I mean, think about it. If a cancer patient is in remission, they're so afraid when they go back for the scan. It's not as if time just takes the aftermath of this away from anyone who's battled any kind of life-altering illness. And so, what I hope happens in the future is that MTB is integrated into medical practices to say, hey, you need to be tending to this part of you instead of just bulldozing through to get physically better. You need to be actually tending to the mental, emotional, psychological aspect that will be wounded if you don't.
Mm.
Wouldn't patients act so differently if somebody said that?
It's powerful, Amy.
It's not just like, oh, I'm physically better. Let's just hop back into it. I'm good. It's like everything has changed. Everything as you know it. And your stress response system does not get the memo that you are safe unless you do the work to rewire your brain and remind your body that you're safe.
Mm.
It's essential. There's people that are just living in what I call the shadowlands forever because
Hmm.
there's no plan. There's no recovery plan.
Right. I don't
It's
even,
not like we are just in like the Victorian era where we can just go lay down and like just rest. It's not like that anymore. Our society is like, go, 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 achieve, 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 move on. It's over. Just get over it. You're
You're good.
fine.
You're good. Keep going.
And
Yeah.
it's just not that way. It is life altering.
I would love to see MTB incorporated into complex chronic illness care. Is going to have to come from a functional medicine standpoint. It's going to have to come from that angle, at least initially. Um, you can just see how much time is spent in a functional medicine appointment versus what a Western medicine doctor has even available to her or him. But
But
anyhow,
this was something that I really
good.
like. I went and interviewed so many people, and I would say to my most trusted physicians, hey, this is what I'm going through. Do you see this in your practice? And all of them said yes. And when I asked what the name was, none of them had a name for it. Now that you mention it, I do see it. It's like they're better, but they're not acting as if they're better. And then I'm like, oh my God, is this even bigger than I thought it was? Is this something that people are suffering in the most silent, painful, excruciating place because nobody ever said this is a thing, this
Hmm.
is what you have, and this is how to fix it? So even amongst patients and doctors and all the hundreds and hundreds of interviews I did for this book, everyone, once I said it, was like, oh yeah, this is a thing, but there wasn't a name. And so
Right.
that's why I gave it a name.
Yeah, I can see that it could be add on like a health coach or an MTV coach. I can see you having a fantastic impact. So for our listener today who says, that is me, and I don't know where to begin in any stage of chronic illness or some kind of situation like this, where do they start? You give so many in the book. Start by getting the book because you give so many great therapies and modalities that worked for you. But where would you recommend someone start just today, in addition to getting your book?
I will say that I wrote But You Look Fine, Trapped in the Hell Between Sick and Well and How to Break Free for you because I get you and I believe you and I see you. I wrote this as a roadmap for you to get into the driver's seat of your healing and to help yourself. Because again, you're the only one that can do that for you. And my hope is that this is a launch pad for people to discover more things that maybe I haven't tried or researched. But the first is acknowledging, hey, I'm not okay. I'm physically better, but I'm not okay in a
Yeah.
different way. And there's nothing to be ashamed about that. This is a life-altering experience that has happened to you. And if you feel like what I said about the Shadowlands, being trapped in a sandstorm desert, or this middle painful gray phase, if this feels like it's you, there is a way out. There are a million ways to rewire your brain body and to get to know yourself in a different way. But it all starts with your commitment to yourself that you want to feel free and that you want to feel safe inside your body, which is your home. And that's where you need to get into the driver's seat and commit. Read my book. I promise you it will help you. It will validate you. My whole life's work is about validating patients and giving them tools to help themselves. And I wrote this because I couldn't find it anywhere else. I desperately needed a way out of my suffering, and I really hope that it does that for you, to
Mm.
anyone.
And then go take a leak if you have to pee.
Yeah, go pee. And it all starts with peeing.
Oh my gosh. True. Facts though. How do they get, but you look fine? Take 'em
But
out.
You Look Fine comes out June
But
9th, anywhere books are sold. You can go to my website, amykurtz.com, and get it there. You can go to Amazon and you can also listen to it on audiobook, which will be like me being
oh,
your cheerleader in your
oh,
ear.
are you narrating?
Yeah.
Oh, it's gonna be so good. Does that come out on June 9th too?
Yes.
Okay, you can get But You Look Fine anywhere you get your books and on Audible. Very good. Amy, it's such a pleasure. I love
Same.
when you come on.
Oh, thank you. I love when you have me.
Well, guys, I'm so glad you joined us today. Let us know how you like Amy's book when it comes out on June 9th, which is this week. And I will be back next week. Until then, stay pretty well. Bye.